Hello everyone, how's everyone doing on this Friday? Let me hold on a second, make some announcements. All right, just checking in over here. Everything is working okay. All right. Let me see if I can find the actual thing. There we go. Can everyone hear me okay? You can use the YouTube chat. So if you do have any questions, you can also ask in YouTube chat. And just go ahead and introduce yourself. If you're just joining in, go ahead and introduce yourself, where you are joining in from, where you're logging, and how did you hear about this live stream. So go ahead and introduce yourself in the YouTube chat. All right. Just still trying to set up some stuff. Should be okay. Let's see over here. All right, everything looks okay over here. We are live. Insert. All right, now we are getting some. Oops. Oh man, I hit this feature. Okay, there we go. All right. So we have Ajay joining from India. All right, welcome Ajay. Thank you for joining. Who else is joining over here for this live stream? I try to do these live stream every couple of weeks. So uh, Torsten Bernard from Switzerland. Wow, the most beautiful place on the planet, Switzerland. I would never, I've never been there, but hopefully one day I'll be lucky enough to visit Switzerland. All right, over here. Sydney, Australia, beautiful Sydney. Also, never been to Sydney, Australia. But you got to be careful. I've heard that you got to be careful in Australia. Everything is there to kill you. Is that true? Everything over there, every animal, every insect is there just to kill you. Yeah, you got to be careful in Australia. That's what I've heard. Never been there. That's what I've heard. Then we have Hashim from India. We have Wahab joining from Pakistan. We have Thomas Covern joining from Florida. Very nice. Very nice. All right. I'm by the way based in South Florida, Action Speech, South Florida, joining from San Diego. San Diego is awesome. Love San Diego. It's been a while since I've been to San Diego. I think I've been there 2 times. Florida, we go to Pensacola pretty much every year. Let's see if we can make it this year. We just go to Pensacola, enjoy the beach, usually in the winter times when nobody's there. Actually, we go there so much that I bought 3 bodyboards and I hid them somewhere in Pensacola so the next time I go, I can grab those. But I'm not going to tell you where I'm hiding those. Somewhere in Pensacola. And maybe they're not even there now because of, it's been like a year. So I'm sure somebody have taken it or they have been just deteriorated using by the sand and everything. All right. All right. So thank you everyone for joining. This is we're going to be discussing some navigation patterns in SwiftUI. Now, navigation obviously is a very large, very big topic. So I'll be covering some kind of like a basics of navigation, and there is a lot more that we can cover. All right. So a little bit about myself. Here it is. My website is AzamSharp.com, where I publish my articles, and you have different things over here. You know, you have articles, you have courses, newsletter, my YouTube. So I do publish articles, but um, video is kind of like where I usually publish. So YouTube or my own website, that's where I mostly publish article. I think I'm trying to get into more publishing more articles, but articles I usually publish really long articles. You can see this is a pretty long article of for foundation model. I do have articles for navigation patterns, so I'm going to link that over here. You can read this on your own. There we go. All right. So mostly these are long articles. All right. Apart from that, I do work full time, by the way. So I work full time for a coding boot camp where I teach. Sometimes I'm teaching web development, the whole thing, React, Redux, Node, JavaScript, whatever. And these days I'm teaching machine learning with Python, scikit-learn, Matplotlib, Pandas. We're going to be learning now Keras and TensorFlow in the coming week, deep learning, and so those are all the things. But on the side, I also do my own website, which is AzamSharp School. I know that a couple of you, I see Edward is joining in, Edward, and a couple of people. They're part of AzamSharp School. So this is where I publish my courses, but courses, one-on-one coaching, and also live workshops. So if you go to azamsharp.school, you can click on courses and you can see all of these different courses that are available. So foundation framework, machine learning models, skip tools, and all those. All right. And in the content part, like the AzamSharp Pro content, this is where I publish kind of like individual videos. So you can see these will have videos for navigation, reactive, observable, finance kit. So these are kind of like individual videos that I publish. And right now I'm creating a video on how to do integration with API, a fake store API, and then create the whole website. So that's a fun project that I'm currently working on, and more videos are available like every week. All right. And workshops also, these are like 3-hour workshops. So just check it out. I mean, these are, some of you have already attended these workshops, so and you loved it. So these are, already there. Okay. So enough of this, and let's go. Where are we going? Let's go to navigation. All right. Let me first build the app, see if it's building successfully and everything. Okay, let me go ahead and make the, oh boy, how much time is it going to take to fix this now? This one is not there. Okay, there we go. Hopefully everyone can see the font size. I will need to a little bit format it correctly. All right, let's go to the root view. Okay. Now, this is not going to be the complete guide for navigation because there is so much stuff in navigation that you can do, but at least it will give you a little bit of idea of how to do navigation when you are using SwiftUI. All right. And hopefully everyone can see the font. I can actually increase the size a little bit more, but if I increase it too much, then it will be hard for me to see what's going on. All right. Now, navigation has improved a lot in SwiftUI because when they introduced navigation stack, that gave you the ability to perform navigation kind of like the way that you would do when you are using navigation controller. All right, but this is SwiftUI, so everything is mostly like reactive. Okay, so let me show you a couple of different patterns that I use for navigation. We're going to keep it simple, so we're not going to be talking about really complicated stuff, which I've actually, I'll show you some links that where you can read about it. But the very basics of the navigation if you are performing a navigation which is based on a list, like a list-based navigation, right? And there are multiple ways that you can actually do that. That's another thing to keep in mind. With the new additions that they're doing to the navigation stack, you can do navigation in multiple different ways, all right? So let me show you a couple of different ways you can do list navigation, and you can choose whichever one you like. And what I want to do is also, sometimes I'm just lazy. I want to just use, let's see if I can use a ChatGPT. All right. Create an array of names in Swift. And so these kind of things I kind of like use ChatGPT for. I don't really am one of those vibe coders which will copy paste everything. I don't really believe in that stuff, right? So, okay, so if we have a list, and first of all, if I want to display a list and I want to go to a detail screen, how would I do that navigation? And I'll show you a couple of different ways. All right, so we'll create a list and we will simply display the name. So that will show up in the preview on the right hand side in a moment. I don't know why it's kind of slow. Now it's taking a lot of time to display a simple list. All right. So once it displays the list, which apparently is taking forever, let me build the app again. Yeah, I don't know why. Here we go. So now it's displaying it, right? Now, if we want to go from one screen, this list to a detailed screen, we have actually a number of ways that we can do that. The first thing we need to do is we have to be wrapping this up with a navigation link. And you can see the navigation link is the one that takes you from that takes you from one place, one view to the other view. All right. And you can see there are many different options over here. So let me show you this option, which takes in the destination and which takes in a label. Destination simply means where you want to go. And the label means what you want to display. Now, for label, I'm just going to go ahead and put over here. I think both kind of becomes kind of like the same right now. But for destination, I can go ahead and create a separate view. I can call it a detail view body. And this is a very basic one. So you might be saying, okay, this is too basic. And that's fine. All right. Because I wanted to show you something special about this kind of navigation. And I can use a detail view because I want to go to the detail view. But one of the things you will notice is all of these links, I can't even click them, right? I mean, all of these are like faded out right now. They're like grayish color. And the reason is that I'm not even using the navigation stack. So if I want to make sure that this works in the preview, then I would simply wrap the preview part of it in the navigation stack, like this. And now you can see that all of this are becoming active, and I can click on any one of these views to go to the detail view. So that's a very basic kind of a parent detail, parent child, whatever you want to call it, master detail navigation. So that's a very basic one. Now you can, if you want the root view, which is this view, to always have the navigation stack, you can always wrap the whole thing in the navigation stack, and then you don't really need it in the preview. You can remove it in the preview. All right. But usually your controls, your root view is wrapped in the navigation stack in the actual app file. Like over here, you probably will wrap it in the navigation stack instead of wrapping it in the navigation stack itself. So it's your option, whichever one you want to use. All right. So this is a very simple kind of a navigation, as you can see. Now, one thing about this navigation is, which is interesting, is you see this detail view? Detail view basically is saying that this is where we're going to go when we click on any of this link. And that's our detail view. This is the one that is detail view. And I can go ahead and obviously change the font size and all that to make it a little bit different. There we go. Now it's uppercase, or not uppercase, but large title. But what happens with this kind of navigation, and I, by the way, use this navigation a lot, but what happens with this kind of navigation is if I put an initializer over here in the detail view and simply put a print statement in the initializer and just call it detail view in it, then one thing you will notice is that the initializer is called for every single view that I am trying to go. Now, let me actually go ahead and do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's called a lot of times, all right? How it will be if you're simple, so if you start from the UI kit view controller. If you're using UI kit view controller, then you will have to use like a hosting controller and all that stuff. But I think the question will be, what is UI kit controller doing over there? Is it like an app that already exists and you are just adding SwiftUI views to it? Then you will have to use the UI view hosting controller. All right? And then you'll have to do the navigation part of it, or at least host the first view, and then this can take over. All right. So in this case, you can see the detail view. I'm not even going to the detail view, but it's calling the initializer. Now, for me personally, I don't care. I don't care if it's calling the initializer and it's initializing my detail view, because detail view and all these views are just structs. These are value types. So they're not going to be doing any kind of a crazy, I'm not going to get any performance hit with these things. All right. Now, if I was doing something crazy in the initializer, then I would be a little bit concerned that, okay, hold on a second. It's making a call to an API in the initializer. Well, you shouldn't be doing that anyways, right? You shouldn't be doing anything crazy in the initializer to begin with. But keep in mind that although the initializer is getting called, the body is not getting called. All right, so if I go over here, self dot print changes, right? Print changes. And if I run this again, you can see that the print changes is not getting called when the root view is looping through and initializing the detail view. It's only the initializer getting called. So these detail view are not really getting rendered, which is, not getting rendered means that they are getting obviously initialized, but they are not painted to the screen. They're not really, the pixels are not drawn to the screen. But if I go to that view, then you can see that detail view, it says detail view self changed. And now it's basically getting rendered, and it should get rendered because I'm actually going there. All right, so this is one of the ways that you can do navigation. I actually use this approach a lot. I don't really care that much about that if this is getting initialized or not getting initialized, because it's not really going to be that much of a performance hit. Just because a detail view or a struct is getting initialized doesn't mean that it's going to completely kill your performance, unless you're doing something crazy in the initializer, which you shouldn't do it anyways. All right. So that's one of the ways that you will perform navigation from one screen to the other screen. But let's change this, and let's say that you're like, well, I don't really want to initialize detail view. Why is it initializing detail view? Is there any other method that we can use? Well, there is another method. The one which we use with the destination and the label, but there is a one where you can use where it is value and the label. All right. The value that you're going to provide is, in this case, will be the name, and it has to be hashable. And label is going to be the same thing. Label simply means what you want to display on the screen. So label is just this label right there. Okay. Now this is kind of like interesting because what is this value thing, right? So what this value is saying is that when you click on the navigation link, the destination, the navigation destination, so that's a thing that was added, I don't know, iOS 18 or whatever, navigation destination, for a particular type, and you will get the name, and then you can perform the detail view navigation. All right. So this is a different way. Let me actually first make sure that it's working everything. And if I go ahead and refresh this, run this again, see that? Nothing there. So this means that there is no, the views, the detail views are not initialized when you are using this particular approach. But what is this approach? I mean, let's take a look at it a little bit closer, even though it's simple. The navigation link value is name. Name is a string. So now it's creating that kind of a subscription to a string. And this is where we're creating a subscription, or we're getting access to it. The navigation destination view modifier is just waiting for the value of the navigation link to be the string. It's just waiting that, okay, when somebody will click on the navigation link and that value, this value is a string, then this part is going to get called. All right. And it's going to give us the actual value, whatever the value that you clicked on, which is name, and then we can render this part. So this is also known as kind of like a programmatic or dynamic navigation in SwiftUI. Now, you can go ahead and add as many navigation destinations as you want. You can see that there are many different ways of adding it. You can add it to a bindable, like item. You can add it to a Boolean value. You can also add it to a hashable. That's what we have done. So I can go ahead and add it to a Boolean. Now, I don't really have any Boolean, whatever value, and then go to different screen. All right. So this means that if there is a navigation link, when you click it and it is going to assign the value which is Boolean, then this navigation destination is going to get fired. All right. Now I don't really have any Boolean over here, as you can see, but you can add as many navigation destination as you want. All right. So this is kind of like the very basics of the navigation. When you are using list, you want to go from one screen to the other. If your question is like, okay, which one should I use? Should I use the one where you were not using the navigation destination, or should I use this one? It's completely up to you, whichever one you want to use. I have used both the approaches. I usually use the previous one where you can pass in the navigation destination and the label without this. So I've used it without this, and that's fine. Yeah, I know that it will initialize my, the detail view struct, but it's not a big deal. It's not really going to kill the performance. All right. So that's kind of like the very basics of the navigation in SwiftUI. All right. Now, by the way, if you do have any questions, you can always ask the questions in the chat, and I'll try my best to answer those questions. All right. So this is really good. Fine. This is fine navigation. Let's take a look at a different scenario now. This screen, which is I'm calling it the invitation screen, where you are entering, and this is a very common scenario, right? You perform some action, which is mostly like an asynchronous action, and you wait for the response. When the response comes and the response is true, or true or authenticated or whatever, then you want to go to a different screen. This is very, very common. If you're working in any capacity, you have seen this kind of scenarios. Now, initially what I was doing, I was creating a login screen, and if you're logged in successfully, then you can be taken to a different screen. But the problem with the login screen will be that, if you have the login screen in the navigation stack and you go to a different screen, then you will always see the back button. You can even hide the back button, but then people can just swipe to go back, right, to the login screen. So login screen is not usually part of the navigation stack in those sense. I mean, unless you can just kick it out, because you don't really want people to go back to the login screen. So instead of login screen, I'm using this different scenario, but you can come up with your own scenario, right? Okay, so over here, what I'm doing is, let me actually make sure that you can see everything. Okay, so over here, what I'm doing is, you can see that it's a pretty simple code. It's an invitation screen. You're going to write some code over here. I can go ahead and write some code, A, B, C, D, whatever, it doesn't really matter, and I submit. This code will be, let's assume this code will be sent to the cloud using an async request. Okay, and then it comes back with if the code is accepted or not. If the code is accepted, then we will take you to a different screen. All right. So how can we accommodate this scenario? Well, the first thing I would do is I will just create a function over here. Now, in your actual application, you will have some function in your store, in your wherever you're writing, in your HTTP, whatever, right? Check invite. This will be an async function. Now, I'm not going to make an actual request to the server over here, but if you want to make a request, make sure that you are layering your app correctly to do that, so that you can check out the request, test it out, and all that stuff. Task.sleep. So I'm just going to sleep it for a couple of seconds, maybe 2 seconds. There we go. And let's just say that after 2 seconds, the invitation code is accepted as true. All right, so this is going to mimic our request to the server, and we are expecting it to be accepted or true. Just to let you know, I'm in Houston, so the rain is starting. I can see it's raining pretty heavily outside, so hopefully I'm not going to lose electricity, because it is very common. If I lose electricity, I'll still have a couple of minutes, because I'm connected to UPS, so I can tell you that, well, I lost electricity, and then I have to shut it down, all right? And yes, a couple of days ago, I did lose electricity for at least 8 hours, and it was not even raining. So that's why I'm letting you know. All right. Let's go ahead and call the check invite button, the check invite function, task and check invite. Okay, so that's where we're calling the task modifier, using the task modifier to call the check invite button. Now, what we want to do is, when this invitation code accepted is true, then take the user to a different screen. Okay, so how can we do that? Well, we can actually create the navigation destination, the same thing that you have done before. And I'm covering this because this is just such a common scenario, right? Invitation code accepted, and now you can go to a destination. Welcome to home screen. Now, in this case, keep in mind that you can still go back to the invitation screen. So make sure that the scenario that you're using makes sense. For login, it may not make sense. I mean, you don't really want the people to log in, go to the home screen, and then have the ability to go back to the login screen, right? So whatever scenario you select, that's fine. So over here, you can see 2 seconds, and then I'm taking back to the home screen, and it still shows me this button. I can hide this button, but they can still go back. So make sure again that the scenario that you're using makes sense if you're trying to perform this kind of navigation. All right. Maybe it doesn't make sense in this particular scenario, but then use a scenario where it does make sense. All right. Any questions, anyone? You can write your questions in the YouTube chat if you want. All right. Okay, let me just double check something over here. Everyone is following along, everyone is good? All right. Okay. Now let's move back to our root view and let's talk a little bit about, well, how can we create this dynamic navigation but structure it nicer? Meaning, maybe we want to create the whole navigation of our application in one place, like all the routes for dynamic navigation. All right, so let me see how we can do that. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the list and everything because we don't really need that part for this. So I'm just going to remove this, all of this stuff. Navigation. Yeah, I'll probably create a navigation stack over here. Let's see. Should I create a navigation? Yeah, I'll create a navigation stack just for showing you this. Okay. And over here, I will have a VStack. Let's say that I have a button. All right. And the button is saying home, like take me to home. And the other button is saying customer details. You know, take me to customer details. Now, obviously, you will have a much better UI, which will make sense. But what I'm trying to show you is if you want to perform dynamic navigation, right? If you want to create more like a navigation hierarchy or structure for your navigation, you can actually do that using navigation stack and using dynamic routing. Now, let's say that over here, when the person clicks the home button, take user to the home screen. Basically, if you want to centralize your routing or navigation, how can we do that? Take user to customer details screen. So this will be useful for medium or large size applications that are performing a lot of different navigation from one view to the other view. If you're working on a small size app, then you probably don't need the complexity of creating this routing structure that I'm about to build. All right. And there are many different ways of organizing and structuring your routes or centralizing your routes. You can use the enum technique that I'm going to show you, but you can also use navigation path, and the things get very different when you're using tab views. So that's why I'm going to stay away from the tab views. I'm going to show you a video that you can watch if you are interested in managing your tab views. But let's start with a very basic example. If you want to centralize your routes, how would you do that? So I'll create a route enum, and I can just create different routes over here. We have customer detail, I guess, right? Well, what is customer? Well, just go ahead and create a customer. It doesn't really matter. Customer can be a struct. Right? So we have two routes, but over here you can have many routes, and you can even nest different routes. Like you can have patients, you can have doctors, and the patient will have patient routes enum, and doctors will have doctor routes enum, and this can just go on. It creates a nice hierarchy of routes. Right now our routes are mostly just at root level flatter routes. All right. So now the question is, well, okay, we have the route which define these two routes. We have centralized the routes in our application, even though we only have two routes. How can we click the button home so that the user can go to home route? And how can we click the button customer details so the customer can go to customer details route? Right? Now, these are called dynamic navigation. So what I have to do over here is I will have to create a private var routes route. So I'll create an array, and you can see that this is an array of routes. All right. And the way that you perform dynamic navigation is you pass a path as a binding to those routes. Now, this binding doesn't really have to be an enum. You can have binding like, it can be string or anything, but we're using enum, and make sure that this is hashable. So everything has to be hashable. So customer has to be hashable too. All right, right there, right there. All right. So now we have created those routes. We have these routes. We have this home. We have this. So how do we take the user from one screen to the other? Well, we can just append this routes.append and take them to home, right? Routes.append, take them to customer details and pass in a customer. Now, currently this is not really going to work because even though we have implemented our route enum, we have created the routes array, we have also added this binding and also adding it to the array, but we didn't really do navigation destination. And navigation destination is used to actually perform the navigation. So if I click on home, you can see it's kind of broken, right? It tries to perform some sort of a navigation, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really display the correct screen. Okay, so we have to use the navigation destination, and whenever you use navigation destination, try to go at, not on the navigation stack, but try to go at the parent view, higher up level, and then attach the navigation destination over there so that the child views will also know about that navigation, or they can call that, change that navigation. So I'm going to go ahead and say navigation destination for route, because now we're not listening to a string or a boolean, we're listening for a type called route. We will get that particular type route, and over here we can actually perform, we can do something over here. All right, we can perform a switch. We can say if it is home, then go ahead and return home screen. And if it is detail, you'll get a customer. Then we will simply go ahead and say customer detail screen. Oops, not over here, but over here, customer detail screen and customer.name. All right. All right. So now if I go to home, now I can go to the home screen. You can see that really nice home screen. And if I click on customer detail, I can go to the customer detail screen. And our routing looks pretty nice because we can just go ahead and append a route. As you can see, we can append the route and it looks, it looks nice, and we can handle all of these things. Now this part looks kind of ugly because, and this can go out of control also, because if you have, like right now I only have 2 routes, but what about if I had like 10 routes? So how would I use that, or how would I make it nicer? Well, one of the things that you can do is if you go to the route, you can just go ahead and add a computed property destination, which can return you the view, and perform the switch over there. But I can go over here and simply perform the whole switch on self in this case, because we are inside the route. Make sure this is a view builder, and I think you also have to make sure this is a main actor, because it's with Swift 6, it's all like all of these things are a little weird, so you have to do that. All right. All right. And now instead of doing all of that stuff, route.destination. So you can see that now it looks so nice, right? And it is going to perform the same kind of navigation. All right. Question is, in SwiftUI, we create view model main actor. Why? Well, because we want to make sure that the functions from the view model are actually accessed on the main actor. That's why. All right. So over here, if I don't use the main actor, then Swift 6, I think sometime it complains unless it's not using Swift 6. Let's see. Okay, so right now it's okay, I guess. But sometime I've seen that it's complaining. I think if we go in the, I'll show you that it will start complaining in the future. All right. Okay, so right now you can see that it's going one and over here also. So it's really working nicely. But there's a big problem with this approach, right? The big problem with this approach is that the routes array, which is the one that is kind of like maintaining an array of routes, maintaining all the different routes that are in the navigation stack, it's only available in the root view. If I am using a different view, like if I have a home screen or if I create some other screen, then I cannot access the routes array. If I cannot access the routes array, I cannot perform the action of adding anything to the routes array. I cannot perform the navigation. So that is going to be a problem, right? Another question, so what about APIs if we have view model with main actor? Well, then you'll be calling APIs on an async function. When you call APIs on an async function, then it moves away from it suspends the main actor, goes back, and the API call, since it's async, it's going to be called on some other thread, and then when it comes back on the main actor, you can refresh the screen. So, all right. All right, so what can we do in this situation? Because we are in trouble, we can't really, if I have a home screen over here, if I create a home screen, and some view, body, not some view, it's going to be just a view, I think, right? And then view, and we can say this is a home screen. Okay, so let's see where we can return home screen. I think over here, instead of text, we can just change that to home screen. All right, and maybe in the home screen, we can have like a button to take us somewhere else. So let me go ahead and restack this. And maybe the home screen is saying, go to contact us screen. Go to contact us screen. Well, the problem is that we cannot do routes.append and contact us. Even if I add contact us, it's not really going to, because we don't have access to the routes. Any ideas how we can solve that? So think about this while I go ahead and add a contact us screen. Think about that. How can I solve this? How can I perform this navigation where the arrow is pointing? What do I have to do? What do you think the solution can be? I mean, it's a dynamic navigation, right? If you're on the home screen, you probably want to go somewhere. You want to click on a button and go to contact us screen. Well, if I write this code, it's automatically going to tell me you cannot find the routes. See that? So I guess the solution, I mean, what is the solution? What do you think the solution is over here? Go ahead and write the solution in the chat, in the comments. What do you think we should do? I mean, if we're centralizing our routing, we want to access the routes, but routes are only available inside the root view, and nobody else can access because it's a private property, private variable. If I cannot access it in the home screen, then I cannot append to it. So that's not going to work, right? So the easiest solution for this one is maybe we should be taking advantage of a global environment object so that it is available in every view. So I'm going to create a router, and all of this is, you're going to see that all of these things can change, meaning that I will go ahead and show you in a different way also. And I think I'll have to import observation. There we go. Observable and also main actor. Okay, so router will now have an array of all the routes. There we go. Now, in order for everyone to access the router, every screen, I will need to inject the router. So in the preview, I'm just going to inject the router right over here, router. And that's only for the preview. So if you are, when you're actually running the application, make sure you go to the app file and inject the router correctly at the correct place. But for the preview, at least, hopefully router, when injected over here, would be okay. So now, instead of using this private property, this one, since we have injected the router, I should be able to grab the router from the environment itself. So I'll say router.self. All right, private var router. Another question is, how about navigation across root navigation stack, SwiftUI, and some navigation controller, UI kit side if we have mix of SwiftUI VI kit views? I think you will have to probably keep them separate. I don't know if you add something in navigation controller, I don't think it ends up in the navigation stack and vice versa. So you will have different things. I mean, if it's a tab-based tab, you can probably control it much more easily because each tab can have its own navigation stack or navigation controller. But if you are going into that kind of a messy situation where you have like different things going on and you have a navigation controller and navigation stack, probably you will have to manage them separately. All right, so we're getting access to the environment object over here, and environment object does have a router.routes. But this is interesting, look at that. Even though the router does have a property called routes, it's actually complaining that, hey, I'm not able to find that property, which is kind of weird, right? So the reason is the environment object over here, all right? Whenever you put something in the environment object and you try to bind that, I mean, you can be binding to the path over here, like we're doing over here, but you can also be binding to some sort of user interface, like a text field or anything. It doesn't like that you bind it directly to the properties of the environment object, even though those properties are bindable. So the way to do this, which is kind of weird, is to use the bindable property wrapper, which allows you to create these binding with the observable object. So I can go ahead and say router, and I can simply just assign the router to itself. And now I think, there we go, see that? So we use this router, which is bindable, and now it says, okay, it's like, okay, I can use that, all right? For this, I think I'll have to simply say router.routes.append, router.routes.append. This probably will be the same. Let's go ahead and build it first so that we know that it is working or not. Let's see if it works as we are expecting it to work. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So you can see that the navigation is still working. So the only thing that we have changed is that we created this router and we injected the router right there in the root view as an environment object. So this means that every single screen that we have, or every single view, if they need to, they can go ahead and access the router and perform the navigation. And we can do that. We can just copy this router. Since it's in the environment, I should be able to access it in the home screen. And then if I want to perform a route, I should be able to say router.routes.append contact us. So we'll go to the home screen, and then from there we will go to a different screen like contact us. See that? Contact us. All right. So this can be, really, really beneficial if your application, you are performing this dynamic kind of navigation from different parts of your screen. This can be really, really nice to have. All right. Any questions regarding this, all of this stuff? Now there is so much more in navigation. I mean, you know, but this is at least going to get you started. Now, keep in mind that this technique that I'm showing um, will need some editing to make it work if you were using tabs. Like I'm not using tabs, right? So tabs mean if I had tabs like this, because each tab will have its own navigation stack. So navigation stack will be different for each tab. So nav stack 1, navigation stack 2, navigation stack 3, and so on, navigation stack 3. But in our code that we have written, we are not really using the navigation stack. All right. I mean, we're not using the tab view. If we were using tab view, then every tab will require a new navigation stack or its own personal navigation stack so that the different tabs can have different hierarchy or different depth. You don't really want to mess around with that part. All right. But we're not using tab views right now in this example. But if you were, you will create multiple navigation stack each for each tab. All right. All right. Any other questions? Now, this is obviously the first one, the first, the navigation pattern that I'm discussing, or the navigation pattern live stream, because you will see eventually in the future stream I will discuss. My main goal is to get inspiration from React, and let me actually show you how React does it. It's always a good idea to look at these frameworks like React and Flutter just for inspiration, just to see how they're doing things. So in React, what they do is they use a hook called use navigate. It's called a hook, but basically it's a function. So it's just the hook is just a fancy name. All right, so it's basically a function. And look at how they're performing the navigation. Navigate. I think that's really nice if you can actually say just navigate and navigate to a particular path. Obviously, they're passing a string over there, but in Swift, we can pass an enum. So that will be really nice. So my actual goal, and by the way, it has been covered. I've covered it. I'll show you some of the videos that I have that covers that. That's on my AzamSharp school. But I'll probably cover that in the future videos, live stream also. But what I want to do eventually is something like this. Obviously, this is not really going to work because I don't have the code for it, because we're running out of time. Navigate. Okay, so this is not going to work right now. And then if I want to perform any navigation, I will simply say navigate home. And the beauty of this is that if you use something called a navigation path, then you can even call the views from one hierarchy to the other. Like if I have some tabs over here, this is for, let's say, patients, and this is for doctors, then you will be able to do that. You'll be able to go from patient to the doctor, doctor to the patient. So that's actually pretty nice. And look at that. This looks really nice, right? Now, if I was doing some sort of a little bit more hierarchical data, I can also do this, patients list. I think this looks pretty nice and easy to follow, and you can access this in all the different screens, whatever, create the patient or whatever, and then you can also do different routes for doctors. Now it's going to go to doctors list. All right. So all of this we will probably cover in the next live stream, like how do you make this. It does require a bit of code to implement the navigate hook or navigate environment value. Um, it will be nice for medium size or large application. I think if your application is small, just use navigation destination inside your screens and you'll be okay. All right, you don't really have to go the enum route because enum does add a little bit of a baggage, like right here, I think. Where's the enum? This one. It does add a bit of a baggage. It does, you do have to structure your things in a particular way to get it to work. And you do have to implement like navigate and all these things. Um, so obviously you can also implement your router a little bit differently. If you have multiple tabs, you can create multiple arrays. But with the navigate one, the navigate solution, what I've done is that you can access all of this much easier. All right. And let me actually show you. We'll probably cover it sometime in the future. But if you are, let me see, I think it's in the over here, in the pro member content only. It's a pretty long video that I did. Yeah, okay, there we go. It's a 25-minute video, building a multi-tab navigation in SwiftUI with enum-based routing. So this is a really, let me see if I have a link to that. It's for members only, so by the way, so we'll discuss that. If you're not a member, that's okay, but we'll discuss that in the future also. All right. All right. Any other questions before we start wrapping up? Yeah, that's not a good idea. I'm using navigation controller in SwiftUI. Every SwiftUI converted to hosting and using the no. That's not no. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. You're completely moving away. You're mixing navigation controller, which is from UIKit framework, in SwiftUI, which is more of a reactive framework. Try to use the things that are provided with SwiftUI to perform the navigation. And I've shown you that you can actually do all of that stuff that you're trying to do in a much easier way. So no, don't. I would never do that. Like I know that I have heard of other people also doing this. They're using navigation controller, and every SwiftUI view is hosted. That is wow. No, I don't. I don't want to do that. Right. All right. All right. Any other questions before we start wrapping up? Thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Now, if you do enjoy these things, check out AzamSharp.school. I have a lot of courses over there. I keep on adding more videos and courses too. One-on-one coaching is available and also workshops. Now, workshops are live 3 hours. I know there's a couple of you have already, uh, you know, used these workshops or you were part of the workshops. These are 3 hour workshops. For monthly members, you get half off the workshops. I think it's right there if I go to over here. See that? So monthly member can get like half of workshop, but if you are an annual member, you get like free workshops. So you can just get access to all the workshop for free. All right. So yeah, I'll be adding more workshops over here too, and these are just very hands-on workshops, like just 3 hours hands-on, and these are extremely good. Like people who have attended these workshops, they went the next day and they started creating server side apps for Vapor, and I'll be adding more workshops in the future too. All right. All right. Any other question? Thank you, Tolsten. Thank you. I'm glad you liked the presentation and the session. We'll do more of these. I know that, as you can tell, it takes some time to prepare these sessions. All right. And yeah, I'm just going through the courses. Some of the courses I'm working for updating. If you are looking for a free course, just to get you started, it's a very basic course for SwiftUI. You can definitely check that one out also. It's a pretty basic course. All right. And yeah, if you have any suggestions for the workshops, videos, let me know, and maybe I can, put it in the schedule for those things. But yeah, I'll definitely be adding some more workshops over here, maybe for SwiftUI architecture, like build a whole app. That will be a fun workshop to do. Um, Machine learning workshop, augmented reality with a reality kit, that can be a workshop. Unit testing. So all of those things can be really good workshops. All right. All right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Hope you have enjoyed this session, and maybe in the future session I'll talk about a little bit about how to do the navigate hook or the navigate environment value that you can use. All right, but thank you everyone for coming. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you, and I'll see you in the future session, future live stream.